Foxes are a mystery. Despite there being 500,000 of them in the UK, living in the most densely populated of areas, most of us rarely see these wonderful animals. If you're lucky, you might spot one whilst driving at night, a fleeting flash of orange slinking into a hedge. Or if you're really lucky, there might be one who passes through your garden on his nightly rounds, and maybe you even leave food out for him. Though for most of us, foxes are these mysterious, storybook-like creatures of the night that skulk in the shadows of street lamps and moonlit alleyways. But we've been afforded a rare insight into their secretive lives. A family of foxes has recently taken up residence in my girlfriend Danielle's garden. Okay, technically they live in the neighbour's garden, but their den, or earth as it's known, is located under a large shed that then opens up into her garden, and it's here where the cubs like to play. The only sign I could find, however, were some droppings. Pretty gross, right? That said, they could belong to the other character in this story, Bella. Bella is Danielle's cat. She's 11, and whilst I don't wish to offend her, she's pretty small and fat. And she's not even hugely fond of the outdoors, much preferring to while away the days in whichever room Danielle's currently in. As far as anyone knows, Bella and the foxes avoid each other. But let me get to the point of all of this. Last year, I filmed the late night adventures of my cats using a motion-censored night vision camera, and it's just been lying around in a box ever since. So I wanted to use it to capture the foxes, and hopefully shed some light on their secret world. I also bought 3 more cameras, so we could turn this into an all-out surveillance operation. The cameras work using infrared light. If something passes close enough to trigger the motion sensor, a beam of light is sent out. This light is invisible to both humans and foxes, but allows us to see what's going on even in total darkness. Anyway, I positioned camera 1 right by the house, with a view of the entire garden.
There we go, I think that's all set up, that should be good. Hopefully you can see me.
Camera 2 was attached to a tree stump facing the end of the garden, and camera 3 on a tree pointed at their den.
Hopefully that one's good as well.
Finally, camera 4 went on a drain pipe in the alley that connects the garden to the road. Everything was good to go. All we had to do now was wait. And wait. And wait. But then at 5:30, we had some activity on camera 1. Bella. She clearly wants to be the star of this video. She sits in front of the camera and has a little bath before wandering back inside. The next activity comes an hour later, and once again it's camera 1. And once again it's Bella, but coming up the garden this time, somehow she's managed to evade the camera on her way down. But then she hears something. Could it be the foxes? Nope, it's her arch nemesis, Dr. Evil. I mean, that's probably not the cat's real name, and I'm sure she's a lovely cat, but her and Bella don't get along. And Dr. Evil appears to be looking for foxes too, before deciding otherwise and disappearing over the fence. And then it's radio silence for over 2 hours, until 8:42, when we finally see our first magpie. Seriously? I promise you we'll see some foxes eventually. In fact, take a closer look. It's one of the fox cubs. Whilst the adults can be a little scruffier looking, the cubs have this pristinely clean and still quite fluffy coat. They're now 3 months old, still not fully grown, although it can be hard to tell unless adult and child are stood next to each other. And curiosity gets the better of the cub, coming over to investigate the camera and giving us this wonderful closer look. It's not long before his siblings appear. There are 4 cubs in total, born in late March. They're born the size of a small orange, with their eyes and ears closed, their nose pink, and covered in a fine layer of grey fur. They're completely dependent upon Mum for food and warmth, and Mum doesn't leave the earth at all during this time, in turn completely dependent upon Dad. It's up to him to find enough food for the whole family. It's an exhausting time to be a male fox. But then in early May, they begin to venture outside. It's a month or so later where our story continues. The cubs now have their adult colouring and are constantly playing, waiting for Mum to return with some food. They're fully weaned and have a full set of teeth, but still aren't capable of finding food for themselves, and when Mum returns, they excitedly run over. Food is on a first come, first served basis. The fastest cub gets to eat. But he drops it. His sister swoops in and steals the meal, fleeing the scene before her brother can even realise what's just happened. He returns to the scene of the crime, but it's too late. Hungrily, he chases after Mum to see if she's found anything else. In the meantime, the other two cubs have taken matters into their own paws. It might surprise you to learn that foxes are incredibly fond of worms, and at certain times of the year they can even make up to 60% of a fox's calorific intake. Here's some separate footage I filmed of an unrelated adult male hunting worms in a field. They're a particularly important food source to cubs since they're just about the only prey they can capture without the help of Mum. But one of the cubs has found something much more interesting. From the grainy footage I can't really tell what it is. I think it's most likely just a bit of rubbish or perhaps a sock. Either way, they both want a piece of it. It lasts for nearly 10 minutes, and several times they even throw it into the air. Playing like this is a critical part of their development, learning how to hunt, developing their muscles and honing their skills and instincts. By the end of September they'll be on their own, without Mum to rely on, and it's a sad fact that 70% of foxes don't make it to their first birthday. Practice like this can therefore be crucial for their survival. An hour later, once darkness has set in, the pair return to play with the mystery objects some more, and this time they exhibit another fascinating behaviour: mousing. The fox freezes until it can precisely pinpoint its prey, launches itself into the air at a 40-degree angle, and then pounces immediately down before the prey can escape. At this age, it's a little more clumsy. The cubs are just practicing on beetles or other insects, but as the name suggests, adult foxes use the technique to hunt mice, voles and small mammals. It's really cool to capture them practicing such an important technique on camera. But they're about to be interrupted by the biggest, baddest bully in the neighbourhood. A creature so terrifying no fox dares get in its way. Bella. She arches her back, tail raised in the air, showing those pesky foxes who's in charge. Great one, Bella. How am I supposed to make a video about foxes if you've scared them all off? Nearly an hour goes by with no fox brave enough to return. But then Mum appears with some food, and her cubs are beyond ecstatic to see her. One cub is especially excited. It's probably a good time to point out that I haven't muted any of the footage, it's just the foxes were disappointingly silent for most of the night. Anyway, the evening continues in much the same way. I'm endlessly impressed with just how easily they jump the fence. Well, most of the time. At one point, one of the cubs finds what appears to be a toothpaste tube and spends a good few minutes trying to squeeze out its remaining minty goodness. As I'm sure you've noticed by now, foxes will eat more or less anything, from insects, small mammals and the occasional bird, to berries, human food scraps and discarded dental products. Foxes are primarily scavengers and have subsequently developed strong stomachs and immune systems, so anything and everything is on the menu. A short while later, we capture yet another iconic fox behaviour: the foxtrot. The cubs rear up on their hind legs, ears flat, mouth wide open, and paws on one another's shoulders. The aim is to force the opponent to the ground, although quite often they both topple over in a cartoon-like ball of fur. The battle looks more aggressive than it is, with serious injury or bloodshed exceptionally rare. Instead, it's a comparatively harmless way of establishing dominance, without the risk of getting too badly hurt. The playing goes on right into the early hours of the morning. By 4:30, it's almost daybreak, and the camera switches from night vision to standard mode around 4:45. We immediately get to see Mum offering a single cub some scraps of food. He seems less than enthusiastic, so she gathers up the food in her mouth and sets off to find another cub who might be more appreciative. But shortly afterwards, she comes back with something the cub can't resist. Literal rubbish. Obviously this isn't meant as food, and foxes don't line their earths with bedding unlike other animals, instead sleeping directly on the soil, so I can only assume it's intended as a toy. Foxes do bring interesting objects back for their cubs to play with, and even large insects and small mammals still alive, to try and encourage their hunting instinct. We then see this heartwarming interaction between mother and son, and can really see the size difference between the two. The cubs might look fully grown in the footage when they're on their own, but they've still got a long way to go. And then for the first and only time of the entire evening, we finally get to see all 4 cubs together. Overall, the whole process was a resounding success, capturing a lot more than just cat butts wiggling into a cat flap. Not only did we get tons of adorable footage, but we filmed the cubs playing, hunting worms, mousing, foxtrotting, and just generally exploring and learning about the world. In a few weeks' time, their inquisitiveness will turn into apprehensiveness, as they learn to be more wary of the big wide world and its many dangers. But for now, this has been a wonderfully enlightening snapshot of their foxy frolics,